You're listening to Impolite Society with Laura and Rachel.
Recording. We are recording.
I picked this exact moment to reposition my microphone because I'm a goddamn professional.
That's how we are, man. We are
Two pros.
two pillars of the podcasting community.
That's what we tell ourselves, at least. And we've got, this episode today is going to rock the podcasting world.
That's right, because you are here with Impolite Society. I'm Laura.
And I'm Rachel.
And we're in person today. It's fantastic.
It's a throwback. It feels like the early days, but we are sitting parallel side by side like we're in a car.
Staring at our laptop together.
I mean, this is going to be nice, though, because this will, make this awkward conversation a little easier. We don't have to stare into each other's eyes. We're going to get real emotional today, folks.
I mean, it is a very special episode today. And before I dive into that, I do want to say happy 4th of July to you, Rachel.
Happy 4th, even though I'm not feeling very patriotic right now, TBH.
Preach. But not happy 4th of July to you, listener, because it will be past the 4th of July by the time you hear this. But I think we needed to mention it because you are going to hear fireworks in the background.
Yes, because we are out here in the land of personal freedoms where you can't stop the fireworks.
And they are lighting them up out there. And I didn't want you to get confused and think that, Rachel and I are actually broadcasting live from the Ukraine.
Although we are in a bunker, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of a bummer, right? Thinking about that. But speaking of bummers, I've got a real question for you.
Wah.
And that question is, are you ready, first and foremost?
I had a drink, I steeled my nerves, and I'm ready. I am ready.
Rachel, why are we quitting the podcast?
Because I just can't fucking take it anymore.
She can't take my ass no more.
Yes, we're breaking up, but it's okay. We've got a lawyer involved. And don't worry, listeners. It's going to be a shared custody.
Shared custody of our LinkedIn chats. You can't get rid of me that easily, Rachel. No, we are quitting the podcast, but we're not.
We are quitting the podcast.
We are quitting the podcast. We're not breaking up.
The podcast is over. Well, I was trying to do a whole bit. I don't know. And then I was like, we have no assets to divide. It's because we have a comprehensive prenup.
We have all 5 of our listeners, and
No, we have more than 5.
Okay, fine.
We have a lot of first-time listeners who never come back. But
Heyo! So why are we quitting the podcast, Rachel? I know I have my own reasons. I'll start if you want.
I think yours are probably the most valid, so just jump right on it.
Okay. So I am expecting some big life changes. We're recording this in July. I am due with my second child in November.
That's 100% more babies than you have now.
That is double the amount of babies, double the amount of work, and the prospect of continuing to do all of this work at the same time while I was on maternity leave, trying to adjust, was a little bit daunting. And honestly, I think we burned ourselves out a little bit. So we were trying to record batch episodes,
Yes.
so we could do it, release all those episodes while I was on maternity leave, and we were churning one a week. And I think that really burnt us the fuck out.
That put I mean, there was a reason Impolite Society came in as a bi-weekly podcast to begin with.
Yeah.
And, there's nobody here from the get-go unless you're family or friends. But if you are, you the real MVPs, thank you. But if you remember, there was a brief break before we became Impolite Society, and that was also due to babies. And that was a 6-month break. So we were trying to power up to go through the next kind of maternity situation, but we couldn't cut it, folks.
And that's because it's so much work. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love this podcast. It is a labor of love, truly. But a ton of work and a ton of time goes into this podcast with the researching, the recording, the editing. We bring a lot of knowledge to the table, and it takes a lot of time to dig through and find the gems.
And that burden of bringing knowledge was not one we started with, truly.
No.
And it was really starting to weigh heavy on me, not going to lie. I never felt like I was educated enough to speak on the topics. And I found myself saying things that I'm like listening back to and editing. It's like, you don't believe that or you don't think that. And it was hard putting out content that I didn't feel aligned with my beliefs and my values. And that was probably one of the bigger reasons I started to have the inkling of Impolite Society running its course. And
What kind of things were you saying that you didn't believe in?
I would say things wrong. I would just say, and it goes into kind of the research was starting to weigh on me a little bit too, because there was like 3 or 4 in a row that I did that just bummed me the fuck out, man.
All the sex ones.
Yeah.
The role of females.
And I think that maybe that's true. Maybe there is a biological component to it, but I also did not like that I was putting that out there as an excuse for men to behave in certain ways, or, you know, for people to write off that the way things are now, the way things have been is acceptable.
Natural.
Yeah. That was actually probably my biggest concern with some of the content we were putting out, was that the way things are is natural. I mean, it really affected how I was viewing people. See, we're getting deep. This is what happens when we don't look at each other. I stopped seeing people. I didn't stop seeing people as people.
You only saw them as apes.
Yeah. But it definitely, I mean, and it's, I think for the best too, because it affects how you perceive, you know, like you are less judgmental of other people, right?
Yeah.
When you see them as just highly functioning animals.
Definitely. I felt much more tolerant of other individuals.
Well, truly, yeah. But it ended up being the responsibility of trying to bring forth impartial information was starting to weigh on me, and that was one of the first kind of tipping points.
I definitely felt we were talking about the responsibility. Every time I said something, I'm like, is that true? Like I had to double check every thought that I had, which takes a lot of work. But I can't say that I felt bad about bringing that information, but I do understand where you're coming from. It's kind of this thing of some less evolved animals might take this evolutionary biology as an excuse to be a total alpha male retard. Oh, wait, that's not. Sorry.
You can't say that.
I can't say that. You know what I mean, though. You know, other people might misuse some of the data that we were presenting. I can understand where that feeling came from.
Yeah, and as much as I think evolutionary biology is fascinating, I don't think it's the be-all, end-all either. I think that there's other things that factor into the human psychology. So it was just, it was a mix of, it was a ton of work, folks, and you guys are worth it, but
you're worth it.
You deserved, I think, at sometimes better than what I was able to give, because I was just so burnt out. Like, I listened back to some episodes and I think there's a lot of good stuff there, but you're always the biggest critic of your work, right? But I hear like bad edits and stuff and I'm like, oh. So it just, that perfectionism, right? You're also, not only you're trying to be 100% accurate all the time, but you're really trying to be perfect. I'm just harping on everything.
Well, I think another thing that got to you maybe a little bit more than it did to me, but it did still get to me, is that we really couldn't talk about our show as much as we wanted to with people.
Yeah, we're spending all this time working on this podcast, and like I never talked about it at work. I don't bring it up with family except for like my most immediate one or friends, because back in the day we started promoting on our personal channels. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, we almost thought we got fired once. Add that to a list of favorite memories.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But I had a friend come up to me and she said that she was listening to my podcast, and I instantly got uncomfortable because the persona that I portray here is vastly different than who I am in my day-to-day life. And it was just, it felt embarrassing. I don't know. I'm proud of it and we spend so much time on it, but I would also like to be able to share it and like boast about it and like send people to listen to it without worry about them hearing about my sex life or me say really raunchy things.
Well, for the record, I like your alter ego very, very much. She's very funny.
Regular Rachel's funny too.
She is. But the alter ego Rachel is very crude funny, which I also enjoy. But I completely understand that, because I couldn't talk about it at work. Same thing. We work in conservative industries. So, and I don't think that our show was that bad. I don't think that we are very crude individuals, but the episodes are most often, or at least half the time, they're sexual in nature. And that academic part tends to get buried, you know? People just think of like, oh, you're just talking about sex. And it's like, no, we're not talking about our sexual experiences, which I mean, I guess we have a few times, but it's talking about actual research, academic research, biology, history, and all that kind of got swept under the rug because it's just like, oh, you're talking about sex.
Yes. And even still after, I never quite had the right way to describe what it was about.
Yeah.
And
because it's brainy and raunchy at the same time.
yeah, and you know, those of our folks who found it, you're the best, but I had a hard time finding where it lived.
I would agree with that. And it's been a long road. You know, we've done a lot of things right, a lot of things wrong. We've learned a ton. Like how I just learned that we had the wrong email address in every single fucking episode description of this podcast. So if you go to Apple Podcasts and you look, it says email us at rude@impolitesociety.com. That is not our fucking email address. We say it right every time when we end the podcast, rude@impolitesocietypodcast.com.
Podcast.
And yet, so
Some motherfucker already had that domain name.
so enjoy it, whoever got our mountains and mountains of fan emails.
Yes.
So if you ever
man.
sent us an email, I'm really sorry. We weren't ignoring you.
Yeah, well, the people who did make it to us, we also kind of ignored you too. So we're not cut out for the celebrity lifestyle.
Perhaps not.
But I will say, this is your last chance to save Impolite Society, because if you are absolutely dying to keep hearing more, please email us at our actual email address. You know, send a letter sending campaign, right, from 30 Rock.
Yeah, put white powder in an email and send it too.
And you can actually do that at rude@impolitesocietypodcast.com.
Tell us you love us. Tell us you miss us. Then maybe we'll think about doing something different. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
You never know.
Just because we're not doing Impolite Society doesn't always necessarily mean that we'll never be back in 10 to 15 years. Mom swipes left style.
Woo! ... So, what are a few of your favorite moments, Rachel? You want to share a few of your favorite podcasting moments as we close out Impolite Society?
I definitely will always fondly remember the magical time of just starting this in pandemic 2020.
Sitting on the couch.
Yeah, talking about how we're like, this can't be going on that long. 2 years later, here we are, just finally getting a little taste of normal. But yeah, that was a really fun time. Just everything was like super exciting and giddy, and every download was like, what?
Woohoo!
And every time we did podcasts, I remember we would record on your couch and I would listen to the raw recording on my drive home, not more than like 15 minutes after we had stopped recording, because it was crazy. And all the figuring out how to get it posted to directories, and it's all second nature now. I mean, we've been doing it for 2 years, but at the time it was like fucking magic.
Yeah. One of my favorite things has been making podcast friends. It's been really fun.
You got to shout out the podcast friends.
Oh, well, absolutely. We've got Reluctant Historian. We've got Nerds Talking. We've got Mom Swipes Left.
And some old ones. Water Cooler.
Water Cooler Talk. We have I Miss You Man.
Eating with Stan.
Eating with a Regular Guy. Stan. Who else?
I mean, we did the I Miss You Man.
That's what I said. I said I Miss You Man.
Oh, okay.
Our friends from Down Under. Oh, I
Down
didn't forget.
Under.
Yeah. And it was super fun. And I'm sure I'm missing some, but those are the ones I feel like we communicated with the most. But
yeah,
it's just great to
Prancing Pony. Let's
Pony.
not forget our most famous podcast.
Alan. Hi, Alan.
He's not listening.
No, he's definitely not listening. He's got like big time actors on his podcast.
We met him in line in a bar at our podcast conference, and then we were just best friends the rest of the time. Because I feel like he was also introverted, so he just latched on to somebody.
Well, and I mean, I think we're friendly, we're fun, we're cool.
Yeah.
But that was just cool, you know, getting to know people who do the same thing, learning things from them, talking about stuff,
we had a
and
video
watching
call.
them grow too.
Yeah. We had a video call with somebody in Australia, and I never would have had that happen if I was not doing a podcast.
Yeah. That was fun. And it was like crack of dawn of like the next day
Yeah.
for them. And I was like, what's the future like? Tell me what the future is like.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Speaking of other video calls that we also had a video call with an iHeartRadio producer in a cemetery.
That is definitely a good behind the scenes tidbit. We met this guy. He wasn't as fun as Alan. And he wasn't the most awkward either, because I also had another story about
Other awkward individuals.
Yes. I make friends. Give me your downtrodden and your outcasts, and I will befriend them at 1:00 in the morning when I'm super hammered at a fucking iHeartRadio party with, who was the DJ?
I have no idea.
Questlove.
That sounds right. Yeah, Questlove.
We spent an insane amount of money to go to that.
It was fun. And yeah, so we met a producer from iHeartRadio. We got
Laura
his
charmed
card.
him.
Yeah, I got his card. I was totally drunk. I don't even remember getting his card. Do you remember that?
No, it just turned up. I remember that I tried to meet him originally, and he wanted nothing to do with me. And the other friend that we had made that night, Will, I think was his name, he wanted nothing to do with us. And I was like, oh, that big fish got away. And then I just walked up to Laura later that night. She had him on the hook.
And I do not remember. Like the next day, I'm like, there's this card in my wallet or in my pocket. And you're like, yeah, that's the producer guy. And I'm like, oh. So we set up a call to talk about the show. And it never went anywhere,
Yeah.
But it was an interesting opportunity to pitch to somebody and talk to them. And it was in a cemetery because randomly Rachel and I were volunteering that day in a cemetery.
It was part of a 36-hour fun day where we started the night before recording at the Lemp Mansion, one of the most haunted houses in America. And that easily is another top memory, was when we took the show on the road and recorded there that night.
That was super fun because number one, recording in person is always great.
Yeah.
Number two, being in that place was really cool.
I was spooked. I'm not going to lie. When we went to bed that night, I was like, ugh.
Yeah, I was drunk and then took some sleeping pills, so I was not spooked.
Yeah, I did not. There wasn't enough alcohol for me for whatever reason. I was not drunk, but.
We did eat a lot of Thai food.
Oh, yeah. I literally greased the wheels. But that was really cool. And not only was that just an awesome experience, because I'd been wanting to stay there a long time. It gave us a good excuse to stay there. But it was really one of my top episodes that I listen to it every once in a while. And I mean, I used to listen to our show a lot more. I've stopped in the last kind of once we got into the routine, I stopped listening to it.
I mean, we listened to it so many times when we edit it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wasn't popping the raw audio into my ears at the first opportunity. But that one I do go back and I listen to. And yeah, there's some audio editing issues. It was our first time using this fancy setup.
Yeah.
But oh my God, the research is one of my favorites. The whole middle section about campfires is probably the best thing I ever did on this whole goddamn podcast.
I mean, it's a great episode. It's very interesting. And that's one of the things that I love the most about doing this show is learning new things that are just really interesting, and it leads you to think of things in a whole new way.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, really quite fascinating and not at all in format. And it was not a taboo.
Who cares?
And I mean, that was one of the, as we keep poking holes in our own show, that was one of the things that we had a really hard time pinning down, was what was the topics that we talk about.
Yeah, because the taboos are sex. That's the biggest taboo in the world. And
yeah.
How many times can you go back to that, really?
Well, yeah, and how many different things can you talk about poo, too? We really, knocked that out of the park. We really beat that dead horse.
Beat that dead
but
turd.
I'm just saying, I'm glad we didn't think like legitimate podcast producers and we just did whatever the hell we wanted, because that's one of my favorite episodes. It's probably my favorite episode.
Well, what are some of your other favorite episodes?
I think, again, and this is also in a top moment, when I was on the video call, because after we came back as Impolite Society, we stopped recording in person for the most part. It was just so much easier.
Well, yeah, because of COVID, but also it just became so much easier because of the microphone situation and travel situations because we live far apart.
And all the drinking we would do while recording.
True.
Nobody should be driving after that.
True.
But I will never forget being on the video call where we were talking and Laura dropped the bomb on me that she went to a nudist colony or nudist camp for the nudity episode. It literally rocked my world.
That was a fun one. That was a fun episode.
That is, up there. And I don't know. I mean, the research was all very good too. But that first segment where you talked about that,
You're like, what?
I know. I couldn't even be like a good podcaster because I was just like jaw floor.
Other episodes that I really liked, I just recently listened to the Can I Eat Myself to Death? That's a fun one. Biology stuff is always fun. And because I'm super self-centered, I'm also like enjoying me correcting your pronunciations all the time.
I always had the medical ones and I like never knew what to say. I would put the pronunciations in the scripts and I still couldn't fucking do it.
Maybe that's why I liked it. I just like correcting you because I'm a terrible person. No, that's not true. It's a fun episode. I like biology.
Definitely really fun. And also, if you like that one, read Mary Roche's book.
Definitely. All of her books.
Because that was heavily inspired by that book. Heavily inspired. Wink, wink.
Another episode I really liked, Periods. That was a fun one.
Oh my gosh.
Cultural universals. Periods. Everybody fucking hates them.
That was one of our first episodes that we found our Impolite Society voice, I feel like.
Yeah.
That was one that was funny. It was quick. That one was a really good one. And that just totally brings back probably another favorite memories / favorite episode was all the Fan Fridays were just a hoot. They're just like, we couldn't fucking figure out what to do with them. The period was a Fan Friday, wasn't it?
So it was Incels, too.
Incels.
Which is another really good episode.
What was that online one where I made an account?
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans. Oh, my gosh. And then the one, Who Wears the Pants? That was so random. We just did a whole podcast episode on pants. And
like pants are a taboo. Yeah, again. Difficulty finding our voice.
Yes, we were like, this is an episode that explains what a taboo is and how they change. And then we were like, probably at grandiose, like, we're going to change taboos with this podcast. We did not.
People still wear pants.
Yep, the taboo of two women talking still turns people off. Lesson learned. Unless they're talking about true crime.
Yeah, then everyone fucking loves it. Well, a bunch of women love it.
Yes. Men don't want to listen to women. Women want to listen to women talking about other women being brutally murdered. What a world.
Speaking of brutal murder, another favorite episode, cannibalism. That's a fun one.
Oh my God. I literally changed my soul.
Because you changed how you thought about cannibalism. I just listened to it.
Yeah, I was just like, anybody who eats, I mean, I never knew about ceremonial or what was it called?
Ritual cannibalism.
I never knew about that. Well, I would have always assumed it was like, I'm going to sacrifice you and eat you.
Yeah.
But actually it was like very sweet at the end. And fun fact about that episode, did we mention it when we were editing it? But we had to record that one twice. That was in the great, that was in the great data dump that I accidentally deleted the entire Impolite Society folder.
I think I do remember that now. And you said you liked it better the second time around that we did it.
No,
Opposite?
that was a lie.
That was the other way?
I was trying to make myself feel better, make us feel better. I don't remember. I was also probably less drunk the second time around. So I think the first time I was like very like, what?
Yeah, your mind was blown.
But yeah, it's funny that you forgot about that because that is a day that I will probably be thinking about on my deathbed. And
her computer crashed. She lost all of our data.
I accidentally deleted it. I did a hard delete. I like did a Control X. Don't ever do it, folks. Literally, I bought like $150 worth of like software that was supposed to pull it back. It was so fucked up because the files we were using were through Audacity or so complicated.
If you know anything about Audacity, you know that the program files are absolutely fucked.
Yeah, so it was just awful. And then we had to re-record, and I literally got a gray hair that day, like at least one.
That was Indie. It was our first Indie inquiry as well from the Reluctant Historian.
Oh, yeah.
That was when we were doing Fan Fridays, and then we said, no, doing 3 episodes a month is too much.
Yeah. Well,
see above. And then we decided to integrate
fold it
them.
in. And all of our listeners were other indie podcasters, so it just made sense.
Yeah. It just made sense.
Yes. Oh man, those were some really good ones. I'm trying to think of just a Batman going down is another just like
I like that one. I think it's so pithy, and that
was probably our best, like most professional one, I would say,
and one of our best downloaded episodes as well.
Well, that's also my way I might like it because I am shallow.
Who isn't? But it's a fun one. It's a good history wrapped in some pop culture and.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Lonely is always a good one. Is Everyone as Lonely as I Am. It's another really popular one. because
Oh
people
my
be
God.
lonely. And I remember that episode changed the way I thought about lonely people too, about it being more of like a distress in the brain, like the people's weirdness from being lonely. I always thought it was just they were awkward because they weren't used to being around other people, but turns out it being chronically, there we go, chronically
Off-putting.
lonely really messes with people's brains.
Yeah.
And you go into this weird defensive and under attack mentality, which changes the way people behave. And that one was really interesting to me.
That was, I remember my TED talk. I had this like, I'm going to pour my heart and soul into this research because I thought it quote unquote important. But I mean, like I ended up making it about like how technology and modern society is making us all stir crazy and
Yeah.
ruining our lives, making us depressed.
Yeah, stop listening to this podcast. Go make some friends, losers.
No, this is a good Band-Aid for the situation is if you have a nice pair relationship with us.
Yeah.
Sorry to leave you high and dry. All good things must end. All somewhat decent podcasts created by two complete amateurs must end.
But not to fear, because I have some other shows to recommend to you guys if you are looking for certain things that I think that we kind of embody. Some of the ones that I listen to in indie podcasts, certainly, because fuck the big guys. I mean, who needs another platform for fucking Dax Shepard? Go fuck yourself.
Or like the fucking doctors for quote unquote real friends, fake doctors
Yeah.
or whatever from
Yeah.
Scrubs. Go fuck yourself. And if you listen to the Office podcast, get a personality. The Office ended like 15 years ago. It literally makes me so mad.
I mean, I'm just saying, famous people, they don't need another platform to be famous. Listen to the losers like us. And so, let me recommend
Some other losers. I hope you're listening.
one of my favorites is The Reluctant Historian. They are a Canadian couple that goes through history, and very interesting. They're a lot briefer than we are. And
It's a skill. It's a talent.
it really is. It is a skill. And so I feel like I learned like quick hits in there.
Because they're married. They don't want to spend any more time together.
And so yeah, I mean, it makes you giggle too. They're not like super dry. It's a unique blend of learning and laughing at the same time. Which
I literally
really like.
had to turn off one of their episodes.
Oh, I know exactly the dick eating one.
Yeah. Oh, don't even say that. It was horrible. It's about that German cannibal.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this really history? I mean, I guess it did happen in the past. But I was like, I was expecting more George Washington shit. But, you know.
They do a Wicked Wednesdays where they like want to dabble into true crime, so they like mix it up.
Oh.
So I'm like, I get it. You don't have to change your format entirely. Again, do your own thing. You don't have to do exactly what, your
You have
format
to
prescribes. You can do whatever you want.
Do what the true crime people want.
Well, I mean, who doesn't want to talk about somebody eating a dick? Apparently nobody, because Dakota almost barfed as he was recording that episode.
That I don't know what that was. I've read that story before, and it does something to me. It was so weird. Anyways, but they're good. They're funny too. There's like light, breezy. The caliber could easily be something you would find on like a professional podcast network.
Definitely. And other podcasts to recommend: Friendly Banter, Nerds Talking, the podcast. Those guys are fantastic.
They sometimes have really good guests on.
Yeah.
That would be us.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And for crude humor, again, along the learning line, I would recommend Time Suck with Dan Cummings. I recommend it with reserve, because sometimes I'm like, seriously, can you really talk about a dick for this long? But
He's got that yuck humor.
he
like
does.
Shock jock.
He does have a little bit of that.
Pow.
Yeah. Oh, he's
Yeah.
definitely got a roadcaster where he like brings
Oh
in
no!
the soundboard.
I'm not
I know.
listening to him.
It's I hesitate to recommend it, but I keep coming back
And he's
every
an indie
week.
podcaster.
He is no network. He is
Oh, wow.
he's really
I
high
thought he
up in
was
the comedy.
popular.
He is,
Yeah,
but he's
he's like, I'm doing it my own way.
he's doing it his own thing.
I
Bad
did it
Magic
my
Productions.
way. And okay, if you were going to really continue with the taboo breaking, because a lot of crude humor is coming from men, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want a crude podcast led by two awesome ladies? Check out Mom Swipes Left. I'm surprised this didn't come up on your list, Laura, because you were like a fan.
I am a fan. I wrote these notes quickly, Rachel. Stop throwing me under the bus. But yeah,
I
they
would
are
say-
definitely, they're the ones that are really breaking the taboos. We're pussyfooting around over there.
Yeah, because you got the PC police over here. And that's the way it is. You said the R word. You're in PC jail.
And also, there's a little throw out there. I'm going to be on Nerds Talking on a pretty regular basis going forward. So check it out. Nerds Talking, the podcast.
She's spreading her wings and she's leaving me behind.
And Rachel is always invited to come pop in.
But
she
I'm-
will be there from time to
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I'm doing something that I did not do for the last 2 years, and that's prioritizing my social life.
What?
Over
What's
the
that?
podcast. There were so many times where I was like, I'm sorry, I can't go on podcasting.
Or I have to edit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it was just like, you know what? Nerds Talking, you guys are great. It's a great time every time I'm on there, but I got to work on my real life a little bit more balance here.
I enjoy it. I will just show up and be charming, or attempt to be charming, I should say.
Charm the
For 2
pants off
hours.
of them. It's what we did. It's how we got that invite.
So that's it. That's Impolite Society. That's the wrap up here. We're thinking we might maybe come back
I
eventually
mean,
as
we
something.
have all this shit.
I know.
that's-
It's not cheap too.
Yeah, to get up and running. But we will be, the episodes aren't going to go away. I think we've committed to spending
Yeah.
that $5
Yeah.
a month or maybe moving it over to a free hosting platform. We'll decide when we.
They're not going away.
When-
I made it. It will be out there.
Yes.
Until the freaking meteor comes.
Yeah, I think we're going to take a well-deserved break after doing this for like 18 months solid.
Laura's gonna push out a baby.
Yes, I'm going to move to Cambodia and take care of baby elephants. That's my plan. And then, maybe when we come together, and I mean, that's why we had to add all the extra commentary too. I feel like, because we can't just be all like, Laura's having a baby, because I know so many men who continue podcasting
Yeah.
during that early stage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're not letting, it's the baby among other things.
Yeah.
There's just other hurdles in the way. And you know what? I think it's a good time to reset. Like you said, we might not be gone forever. We might be back. I think we've learned a lot
Certainly.
doing Big Talk and Impolite Society. And I think that if we were to come back with something different, it would only be improved. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you to all of our listeners. It's been a wild ride. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you reaching out when you did to the incorrect email address.
yes, all those emails made it to us in spirit, in our dreams.
Well, we saw the downloads, and that was what kept our spirits lifted.
And we want to lift your spirits too, folks, before we play those drums one last time.
Okay, that kind of hit me in the feels a little bit.
I know. It's getting me too. And I'm like, you know what? Let me drive over to Laura's house and talk in her basement. And this is how we get wrapped into it. But, before we play ourselves out, we just want to say, even if there is no more Impolite Society, that doesn't mean you can't keep staying curious and marching to the beat of your own drum.
Sniff, sniff.
Thank you for 18 months. Sayonara. Now, life.
Life begins
Yes.
anew.
What happens? What is it? Oh, to live. To live would be an awfully great adventure.
What do they say? What happens when two people stop? What is this, the real world? To stop
never seen the
something, they get real? Never mind. It's not important. I can't even remember the fucking quote.
Yeah, well, we just had to lighten the mood there a little bit.
Bye, all. Hearts. Love you.
And livers.
Bye.
And spleens.
Lungs?
This is the last words we're going to say in this podcast. It's just organs.
Vagina. Goodbye.
It's not an organ, is it?
I mean, what else is it?